Dreams for a dream to die. Rely on yourself in no way. Believe.
Good morning, everybody. Today will be fairly short because this is one of the easier questions I've had to encounter and answer. So it's not going to be super short, but it'll be shorter than normal because the answer will come pretty quickly. But in saying that, I'm not going to just halfway answer the question. I'm not going to leave you with more questions. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make sure I help you understand what is the real answer to this particular question of why is it the fault of humans now because of what Adam and Eve did. So, I have a few analogies that I'm going to bring out, and um, I think some people are going to disagree vehemently, and then there are some that are going to agree, and then there are some that are going to be neutral and say they don't matter, it doesn't care, it doesn't worry. So that's fine. I understand. So good morning to everybody. Why blame man today, or why hold us responsible for the sin of Adam and Eve? So, first of all, what was in the garden was perfection. Okay. And because it was perfection, um, certain things got lost when disobedience got planted in there. Now, unlike physical ailments that can be either treated or sometimes not passed down, a spiritual state before God is not so easily removed. See, when you represent every living creature that resembles God's likeness, and you step out of line and disconnect it, the punishment was that everyone after you would suffer the same thing. This is what we call consequence. It has very little to do with the act being perpetrated upon the next generation just because of the act. It has to do with the punishment that was issued to the person, the initial person. And this comes back to what we discussed yesterday about mankind not wanting to accept the headship and the hierarchy that God put in place. Questions like this come up because we do not want to accept one basic thing, that when God issues a punishment, he has all right in the world to punish as far down the line as he wishes. Now, people who don't agree with that and say, well, I should be held to account for my own merits. Let's take a look at people in general. Adam and Eve did what they did, started off with disobedience. Correct. Good. If you want to say that it wasn't your fault that Adam did what he did and that Eve did what she did, and you shouldn't be held responsible because you're not them, let's take a look at your life then. Let's negate for a moment that Adam and Eve's punishment ever laid on us. Let's say that you were born and you were born with a clean slate before God. Let's just say you were born with a clean slate. You were not held to the sin of Adam and Eve. Okay, Adam and Eve are gone. Their issue erased. And after Adam and Eve, everyone that came after were held to their own issue, which is exactly how it is. But I digress. Okay? So it ain't your problem that Adam and Eve did what they did. It's your problem what you do. So let's ask what you've done. How much sin or disobedience does it take for you to suffer the same consequences as Adam and Eve? Simple question. What would you have to do to suffer the same consequence as Adam and Eve? Or do you think that that punishment was too harsh to begin with? If that's your, then fine. But what would you consider being completely and straight off the top cleared of all wrongdoings? What, after being born, do you think would it take for you to suffer separation from God? Osiris, look, listen here, Osiris. This is not the place to fool around, okay? Not the place to fool around, like at all. This definitely not the place to fool around. If you want to have a conversation, fine, but it's not the place to fool around, like at all. Trust and believe me, you don't want to start this. You don't want to go there. Okay? Or I'm just giving you, that's your only warning. Only warning. This ain't the place. Cool enough? Perfect. Glad we're on the same page. What would it take for you to be separated? For, I mean, your own. It's not a basic question and you know better. Don't ask no basic. That's not a basic question. Don't play stupid. Okay? Please don't play stupid. I know exactly who you are. Don't act a fool. I know who you are. Okay? I know you. So then leave, Osiris. Leave. If my attitude is telling, leave. It's really simple. No one asked you to be here. Like at all. No one asked you to be here. Not a soul. Not a one asked you to be here. You could either shut up and watch or leave. Those are your two options. I'm not giving you a third. Okay? Perfect. How much would it take? In your mind, not in God's mind, in your mind, how much would it take for you to suffer the same consequences Adam and Eve? If you don't want to be held to the same account as Adam and Eve, and you want to be held responsible for only what you do, how much would it take for you to be held to the same account as Adam and Eve? You know, Osiris, goodbye, you Hebrew Israelites. Ban, and I will delete your comment ASAP. Okay, we're done with you. Goodbye. I'm not playing games with nobody this morning. How much would it take? Because I think what we want to do, people, atheists, those folks, what they like to do is to say that, hey, we didn't do what he did and she did. Why should we be held to that? And I'm not that bad of a person. If you're not that bad of a person, then tell me what exactly would make you a bad person enough to endure the same punishment as Adam and Eve. Now, remember, all they did was consume a fruit. All they did was eat. All they did was just disobey one thing. One thing is all they did. They disobeyed one thing one time. So what would it take for you to endure the same punishment as Adam and Eve if you don't want to be held to their punishment and to their actions? If we're just going to talk about your actions, let's talk about your actions. Are you telling me then that you commit and have a less chance of doing something that small than Adam and Eve did? That's the question. That is the main question. Because if disobedience is that's really what got them, is disobedience. If disobedience got them expulsion from the garden and complete exile and distance from God, and you don't want to be held to the punishment, but you're not looking at the action that they did in correlation to what you're doing, then you're avoiding the entire premise of the exit from the garden altogether. Okay? In 1 Corinthians 15, okay, it says, let me make sure I get this large and I can share it up here for you. Verse 20. But now Christ is risen from the dead and become the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since by man death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive, but each one in his own order. Christ the first fruits, afterwards those who are Christ's at his coming. Then comes the end, when he delivers the kingdom of God the Father, with the kingdom to God the Father, when he puts an end to all rule and all authority and power. Okay? There we go. So let's ask this question. If man was made perfect, okay, man was made perfect. Man was made to be in communion with God. Man was given a simple instruction: don't eat. Man was not a robot. Man was not programmed. Man was made and left to follow God. The options of disobedience popped in. I know the whole idea of, well, who made the devil? We talked about that before. And here's the thing: if you want to believe that God created evil, feel free. Feel free. That is completely up to you to believe and decide for yourself. I'm not here to try and persuade you of anything. If you want to believe that God created evil, feel free. But when somebody creates a cup, it does not negate the space outside or inside the cup. That's all I'm saying. So man falls. Man disobeys God. He told them before anything happens that if you do this, the punishment for this is death. They were aware of the consequence. They were aware of who issued the consequence, and they made a choice. This is not about God blaming men today for Adam's sin. This is a state that you are in because of Adam. Mankind, because he was the first, had a connection to God and they severed it. Let's put it to you like this. Imagine a bridge. God and man, they're on the bridge together. mankind decides to burn their side of the bridge, they are now on this side, and only one side of the bridge exists, which is God's side. Now, everyone born on that side of the bridge no longer has a connection to God. And the only way you can build the bridge is if you were not of the same ilk that burned the bridge. If you had no ties to the person that burned the bridge, that's the only way you can rebuild it. Mind you, though, if you had the same nature as the person on the other side, you could rebuild the bridge. If you could somehow regain the same nature of the person before they burned the bridge, if you can get back to that status, you can rebuild the bridge. And there was one man who was able to do that, Jesus. And he rebuilt the bridge. However, he is now on that side of the bridge. And in order for you to get across the bridge, he has to okay it. In fact, what has to happen is as you come across the bridge, any semblance that you have to the original burners of the bridge has to be removed. You have to relinquish every connection to that original bridge burner, or you can't pass. You walk up and you say, but I'm not the guy that burned the bridge. That's fine. You're not the guy that burned the bridge, but you're still his offspring. But I don't have the same problems he did. Yes, you do. Okay, so then what do I have to do? Admit that you've had that same connection. And then get rid of it through me. Okay. But I'm not as bad. Oh, that's not the question at hand. I don't care whether you're as bad or worse in action. In state, you are the same. By the law of the one who created the law, you are the same. And in order for you to come across this bridge, that has to be relinquished. Those are the rules. Now, again, we spoke about this yesterday. Just because you don't like the rules does not negate the rules existing. This is where people try to explain away their issue. This is the problem a lot of men and mankind has. We do not want to admit that he is the one in charge of all of this. Look, if you don't want to abide by what he says, then fine, live the way you want. He left that open for you. In fact, here's the thing, to make this question even more asinine. You don't have to be feeling responsible for the same thing that Adam and Eve did. You don't. You don't have to. In fact, you could live your life like Adam and Eve never existed. You can live your life anyhow you want. However, you don't then get to say that you deserve to be let into heaven because you're not Adam and Eve, because you're not the one in charge of heaven. You're not the one in charge of the kingdom. You don't get to decide what lets you in. Only he does. Now, if you don't want to be where he is, then it shouldn't matter what account he's holding you to. You'll end up where you're going to end up anyway. If you want to believe you're a god, you want to believe that you're a supernatural being, you want to believe you're light, believe whatever you want. He left that open to you. But don't for a minute think that just because you believe something about yourself means that he has to believe it. And just because you think that you should be let into a location means that the person that owns the location must kowtow to your wishes. It's no different than someone coming to my home and thinking they deserve to come into my home. No, fool, I decide whether or not you are worthy of coming into my home. You don't just get to come to my house and expect to get in because, oh, I'm human or, oh, I know this person. That does not make any difference to me. It's my home. I let in who I feel like letting in under the criteria that I specify. But for some weird reason, mankind thinks that he could just decide for God how this is going to go. Atheists believe just because I am not that person, you ought to hold me to a different standard to come into your house. Or for you to accept me, you have to accept it the way I want you to accept it. I don't even know how friendships work like that. But somehow we got to do this against God. We have somehow in our minds the delusion that however we view things, he has to view it. Not the other way around, even though we're trying to get into his world. You do not have to accept Christ. You don't. You don't have to. You ought to, but you don't. You don't have to. Everybody chooses. Choose. Just, choose. Just don't get mad at the choice you make. Here's the thing. There is a fixed truth out there. The fixed truth is that God exists, and you don't have to believe that either. The other fixed truth is that he wants fellowship with you, but on his terms, and you don't have to believe that either. And he demands a certain price be paid in order for you to be in his presence, and you don't have to believe that either. Then he expects you to live the same life that his son gives you, and you don't have to believe that either. Nothing in this world or life requires you to do anything. However, consequences still exist. It's like me not wanting to believe in gravity, and so I jump off a cliff because gravity don't affect me. Thank you, Nadia. Gravity don't affect me. Just because my ancestors got affected by gravity doesn't mean I should be affected by gravity. It's an external force that you can't control, isn't it? It's an external thing that you cannot control, but you have to abide by it, whether you like it or not. Now, you can develop some countermeasures, parachutes, planes, hovercrafts. Guess what all of those depend on to make them operate? Gravity. They're all basing their operation around gravity. So whether they defy it or not, they still abide by the rules of it in order to operate. But for some weird, demented reason and logic, that particular thing does not apply to the creator of all those things. What? It is a very odd thing to me. It's a very odd thing to me. But then again, whoever has ears, let them hear. If you don't, you don't. People could present like the whole horse to water thing and making them drink. You do not have to be in the presence of God. You don't. It's a great thing, but you don't have to be. You don't. If you are an atheist, like I've said before, live like it. Just why are you questioning if God and I'm wanting people to prove to you that God, if he don't exist to you, don't think and have this opposition to people who do. Just live like he don't exist. Why you got to keep concerning yourself about the fact that he may or may not or prove to you that he I don't need to prove nothing to you. You don't believe it. Okay. Okay. Good. Good for you. He doesn't exist. Go ahead, live like he doesn't. I don't know why you got to keep questioning this imaginary flying spaghetti monster that you call him. Why would you need to question something that doesn't exist? That's insanity. To me, you're one of two things. Either you're convinced that he's real or you're insane. I mean, that's if you keep questioning whether or not he exists and him to prove himself. If he's not real, in your mind, he's not true, not real, then you're either insane or you know he exists and you don't want to admit it out loud. Live like consequences don't apply to you. However, when the consequence that you don't think exists happens, don't get mad. We tried telling you there was a consequence. It's not like you didn't have the choice. You had the choice. Everything comes back to choice. Everything. Everything. Thank you, Connie. The majority of people that think that God shouldn't punish people are the same people that don't want to get punished for what they do. They want to feel justified in their actions. They do not want to have responsibility. They don't want to have accountability. They don't want any of that. Telling you could have that. Just act like God don't exist. There's no look, if he doesn't exist, then there's no accountability. There's no consequence. If he's not real, sin is imaginary. Sin is imaginary if God doesn't exist, right? Right. So what are you worried about? You're not held to anything of Adam and Eve. God don't exist. Why would that question even pop into your head? Why do we have to be responsible for the sin of Adam and Eve? You're not responsible for the sin of Adam and Eve. There's no God. See how easy that was? The whole question goes away because there is no God. When I told you it was an easy answer, this is what I meant. There's no God, so there's no consequence. And there's no responsibility put on you because Adam and Eve was never real. It never took place. Fake. Ain't real. Don't worry about it. But you would only ask that question if you are worried that you're wrong. Which tells me you're not an atheist. You're rebellious. You're rebellious. You're in denial. However, you can stay in denial too. That's okay too. Stay in denial. Stay in denial. I don't subscribe to the idea of beating anybody over the head with a truth. I say what I have to say, and if you take it, you take it. If you don't, you don't. Not my problem after that. It seriously ain't my problem after that. You couldn't say you didn't know. You'll never be able to say you didn't know. You could say you ignored it, but you can't say you didn't know. Like, take, for instance, Osiris when that clown came in. No question about, now, mind you, they see the topic and they said the very first statement they made was creation cannot be held responsible. You can't blame the creation. Wasn't creation's fault. Then proceeds to talk about the hat and is this a Christian channel? Now, here's the linchpin to all of this. People know, they know what they want is an out. That's what they want is an out. They want an out. Because if they get an out or a reason to not be held responsible, they will take it. And if they can manufacture it, they will manufacture it. If they can persuade themselves in some small way, form, or fashion, they will do that. One of the ways they can do that is by trying to eradicate their responsibility by blaming somebody else for what they're doing. In this case, they blame two different people. They blame God and then they blame Adam and Eve. Then they say they shouldn't be held responsible by either one of them or to account for any one of them. Hmm. In the grand scheme of things, you don't have to be held responsible for anything. This is the beauty about it. Okay. This is the beauty of how he set things up. This is why when people follow God for who he is, you're not caught up by people's opinions about him. When people go by opinion and feeling and wishes and hopes, the first thing they do is blame the institutor of the rule. You can't hold me responsible for that. Why? First of all, what is he holding you responsible in regards to? Again, atheist, he doesn't exist. Listen carefully. If God doesn't exist, if he doesn't exist, what are you held responsible for? The answer, I don't know how you're going to answer that question. If it's imaginary, then there's nothing to hold you responsible for. So why are you asking the question? You honestly believe he exists. And who are you accountable to if he doesn't exist? Heck, who was Adam and Eve accountable to if he doesn't exist? Precious, I've covered this in another episode before, but I'll answer your question. Why do you believe we are going to heaven? Some of us are not part of the 144,000. We are the other sheep that will be living here on earth as the one who made it through. And I will say this again, like I did in that episode. I don't care where I'll be, and I don't care which member I'm a part of. I don't care whether I'm a 144,000 or a part of the sheep. Don't care. I'm not trying for hierarchy. I'm not trying for placement. I just want to be there. I don't care where there, just there. If I'm not there, I'll be concerned. And I don't care where he has heaven. I don't care if he has it on earth. He blows the earth up, burns it, Brent. I do not care. Because you know who makes that decision? He does. You know who has no influence over that decision? Me. You know, the only decision I have to make is follow or don't follow. Do or don't. That's the only decision I have to make. That's it. I don't care if I'm a part of the 144 to 233 high. I don't care what number I'm at. I don't care if I'm part of the small sheep, little horn, small horn. I don't care. I really don't. My only charge on earth here right now is to follow him. Be found in him whenever the end comes, either the end of my life or the end of the world. Don't care where he places me. Don't care even if I go through the tribulation. Don't care. It's not going to change, one, who he is, and two, what my calling is. It's not going to change jack. I am not doing this based on an incentive of a position in heaven. I'm not doing this based on an incentive of what I'm going to get in heaven. I do not care because it is not my call. I was told to do one thing: come to Christ, to know God. I've done that, and my only charge from here on out is knowing more of God. Period, point blank, unequivocally. Now, if people, not saying you, if people want to get bogged down in which number they land in, feel free. That ain't me. I'm not even worried about heaven. This is how unconcerned I am. I don't even care if there is a heaven. What I do consider hell, though, is being apart from him. And I do understand there are certain things that are going to take place in the last days. Get all that. Whoop, understand. Fine. Not me controlling it. He is. I'm no control over getting in there. He gave me a method of how to be saved. I took that method. He told me exactly what it would take to remain saved. I'm doing just that. And there is no other concern for me. None. I don't care. Because this is why I don't care. Because the person in charge of it is flawless. The person in charge of all of it is flawless, guiltless, does not screw up. So, regardless of where I end up, wherever I end up, I deserved to be there. Wherever I end up, I deserve to be there because he has decided. That's it. I have no control over it. Zero. I can't affect it. I can't alter it. And if people don't believe in him, then it makes no difference anyway. Then the question remains, who will get to decide if you remain in the 144 or not, you or him? Who decides if you don't make the cut for the sheep, you or him? And how will you know the criteria for the 144? I don't care. He gave a layout. And if I'm in it, I'm in it. If I'm not, I'm not. See, this is part of, for me, again, for me, of how I understand what headship and following, the difference between the two is. I have no power over his decision making. I have no power over his person. I have no power over his headship. I have no power over his judgment. I have none. He will have mercy on who he has mercy, and he'll have grace on who he has grace, and he'll save who he said. That's up to him. And whatever he does is right. Period. If people can't get to that point, okay, don't. Don't. This is the beauty of choice. You get to decide whether or not you want to believe it or not. That's entirely up to you. Um, if you know an atheist, always ask them, why does it matter? Why does it matter? I have an answer for that question. Um, real quick, 20. Let's get this one going here. I have an answer for a question in the audience here, and I think it'll be a great answer. Do you think God has favorites in it that he makes it easier for some to know him and much harder for others to know it? Uh, let me give you an example of how his favoritism does not fly out very out there. Then the mother of Zebedee's son came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking him something of him. He said to her, "What do you wish?" And she said to him, "Grant that these two sons of mine may sit, one at your right hand and the other at your left, in your kingdom." And Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink and be baptized with the baptism I'm about to be baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." And so he said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit at my right hand and my left hand is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father." At the end of it all, he makes the call, people. He makes the call. Whoever he has mercy on, he has mercy on. Whoever he judges, he judges. I don't care what his methods are, because whatever those methods are, they are just because he is just. I, I keep saying it comes back to knowing the author. It always comes back to knowing the author. If you don't know the author, don't know what to tell you. If you don't know the author. But if you don't believe in God, don't believe in God. He doesn't exist. Don't ask questions about something that doesn't. You crazy if you're thinking to ask something about doesn't exist. I don't get it. If it's not real, why are you asking questions about the thing? Like, really? why, why you care? It doesn't exist. It's like me going to shop for blinker fluid and asking every store for blinker fluid. There is no such thing as blinker fluid. People are going to look at you who know cars like you're crazy. Blinker fluid don't exist. Why are you asking about blinker fluid? Or trying to go to a store to purchase a can of or better yet, an open can of air for your tires. That's not how that works. Check. Or better yet, it's like trying to buy a can of air for just the right side tire and expecting to get a can of air that says for right side tire only. What are you asking? That doesn't exist. You'd be looked at like a crazy person. If it don't exist, why are you talking about it? Unless you do know better. I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Just live like he doesn't exist, people. If he's not real, he's not real. Then don't care about it. You're not under any penalty. You're safe. You're free and clear. Live how you want. You die, you go back to the dirt. That's it. Nobody remembers you after about 60, 70 years unless you did something super big. Answer is easy. For those of us who know he exists and believe it, we will live accordingly. That's all. The Savage Patriots store is live. It is there's a link to it on the Savage Patriots page, YouTube page. Please go check it out. It's hilarious. The store is hilarious. We have some hilarious stuff. We do have some Joe Biden merch coming here soon. We're staying away from the Trump merch for now. But we have some Biden merch coming up. We have a couple more ideas that we're going to put out, some mugs and other things. So just just keep an eye out for it. They're funny. They're funny. They're funny. We have an interview coming up here after my show. I don't know that we'll be live with it. I think we might be recording it. I don't know yet for sure. There's somebody that wanted to talk to us about something, so we're giving them the platform to speak what they want to speak and say what they want to say. I'm not guaranteeing it'll be entertaining or might be hilarious, might be, I don't know. So too strong I'm talking about. So it might be it's right after the show. I don't know whether it'll be live or not. But if it is, you'll find it. It'll pop up. If it's recorded, we'll dump it later today. If it's worth publishing. We don't know yet. So we'll see. Other than that, love you guys. Mean it. And please don't think because I address people in the comment section that I'm detracting from the topic at hand. Like I keep saying, they always lend credence to the topic. Always. They are yet to not lend credence to the conversation. So, indeed, people, don't worry about them. I got them. And I got this. Don't worry about it. Scrolling below, anything that you want to do, call to do, ask to do, inclined to do, talk to him first, of course, then decide. Whether you listen or not, again, it's a choice. You got to listen or don't listen. And move on from there. Other than that, we'll catch you guys tomorrow morning. The topic for tomorrow, which one was it? Oh, the Christianity and full of hypocrites one. Okay. If Christianity is so credible, why is it so full of hypocrites? So we'll talk about that one tomorrow. So if you're a hypocrite, make sure you show up. If you're a hypocrite, make sure you show up. Wisdom calls to you from the streets. Please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die,